What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 11. I'm John Paz.
And I am Harry. And we are coming to you once again from Chop Studios, located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. Our guest today is Kelly Severini, a former Division I soccer player. She is from Union, New Jersey, where she went to Union High School. She has a few colleges on her resume. She played at the University of Hartford. She is a two-time Big Ten champion at Michigan State, where she graduated from, and she finished her final year of athletic eligibility at the University of Buffalo. Kelly, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you for having me.
How's everything going?
It's good. Yourself?
Can't complain.
Good,
Can't complain. Having a good time today. So, besides that little introduction, how about can you expand a little bit more about telling us about who you are, any hobbies or interests that you have as well?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Kelly Severini. Pleasure to be here. Grew up in Union. Now I live up in Middlesex County, so made the move right before college started. In terms of interest and hobby, right, I think soccer for the most part, I know. But other than that, right now I'm in a little bit of my reading era. I know I sound old now. Recently retired, like you said, back in December. That was my last eligibility. I didn't take any more academic courses after that, so completely done with college. Post-grad has been, ups and downs, right? That's for anyone, I think.
Right.
Trying to just figure out what I want to do, kind of dipping my toes in the coaching landscape, which has been a lot of fun. I've gotten a lot of fulfillment from that, doing more like individual kind of stuff right now, but hoping to expand and challenge myself with a team.
Yeah, I noticed you're doing some stuff out of Metuchen, correct?
Yeah, Metuchen, and then I'm also working at the Sports Performance Center in Hillsborough.
Okay.
We do just group sessions for like a bunch of different club players, right? It's an elite session hybrid,
right.
So it's like strength and conditioning and then soccer.
Cool.
Awesome.
Super fun, yeah.
So how did you get involved in soccer? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've always been around the game since a young age, right? I'm in a soccer family. My parents grew up playing. My mom played in college. When I was younger, they played in leagues. My mom actually just recently started playing again,
wow.
which is super fun, really good for her. My brother also played. He was a goalkeeper. He went to Rutgers. Played for the club team. So just always been around. Our dog was named FIFA, right? So that speaks volumes itself. Wow. So yeah, always been around the game. Got put into rec at age like 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Then, continued playing. I consider myself an anomaly just because I played on my club team, my town club team,
right.
up until sophomore of high school, which is not really common for what you think like a Division I player.
Yeah, it's a little
pathway
different
looks
today,
like.
right?
Yeah, especially now with like recruiting.
Right.
I won't even get into that. That's a whole nother can of worms.
We'll get there.
That question's a little further down the sheet. Don't worry about it. We'll touch on that.
So a big soccer family.
Big soccer
as
family.
A whole.
Yep. Been around, it my whole life. Grew up playing. Grew up watching, right? Big fan. My dad's company also sponsored Manchester United. So, that was like always on Saturday morning. So, always been around it.
Is that your favorite team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Loosely, sure. It's hard to be a United fan.
So you mentioned you had an unorthodox way of getting to the Division I level.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about that journey as how you became a Division I soccer player?
Yeah. So, like I said before, played on my town team, Union Club, up until my sophomore year, right? Had an amazing experience. Some of my best friends still to this day, came from that team. We did really well, though. We played EDP, which I think is still around. I'm not even. Yeah.
I haven't heard them in a while, but I do think
EDP
they exist.
League, right? We went to State Cup. Did really well, but it wasn't what it is today, like ECNL, GA,
right.
ODP. I never played for those kind of teams. And then sophomore year, I was like, hey, I need to make the jump. So let me try something new. So moved up to the New Jersey Stallions, and yet again I wasn't playing for like a high league. It wasn't ECNL, right? It was USYS, I don't even know if that's still around, right? It wasn't top league, kind of towards the bottom, right? But I had an amazing coach, amazing group of girls, and we did really well. So, it's just to show that you don't have to be on like a top team
right.
to get where you want to be or to get to, the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about the journey then. So we go from Union High School, Hartford for a year.
Yeah.
Then we're at Michigan. Well, actually, I did a little bit of research. So you were at Hartford, then, but you missed a year because of COVID, right? So there was a COVID year, and then you got to play 1 year. Then you're at Michigan State, and then you're at Buffalo.
Yes.
So how
yeah,
do
A lot
we
of
go?
jumping around.
How do we go?
Yeah.
How do we go from?
I'm a fan of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
won't
geez.
lie.
We go from a couple of different conferences. I mean, Hartford, what? America East.
America East.
Then Big Ten,
Big
and then the
Ten,
MAC.
MAC, yep.
Yeah. So how do we go? How do we make that transition?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Like you said, freshman year was COVID year, so that was just a whole different, uncontrollable, unknown situation in itself. So unknowingly going into Hartford, I didn't know that they were going to transition from a Division I school to D3 school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was my reasoning for leaving.
Makes sense.
I didn't know that.
No,
yeah,
I didn't know that either.
So it was a whole I won't even get into that. It was like a whole financial kind
Right.
of thing. So why that happened, like my coach didn't even know. My coach of 20 years at that school found out the same way that everyone else did. So it was kind of like a shock to us all. So I knew that going into my sophomore year. But like you said, like my season got canceled.
Right.
Some schools had that spring season during COVID, but unfortunately, like we just kept on testing positive, so we didn't even have a season, which was hard because it was just practicing for
Right.
all those months. But that fall, I needed to, have some alkaloids or have some video and film to, get myself into the transfer portal and be able to show the coaches something. So stayed at Hartford for that year, had a great rookie season, and then, put myself into the transfer portal. If you would have told me I would have landed at Michigan State, it was like a dream kind of. It was like
Right.
making a list. Okay, make a list, put your dream schools on one side, put the realistic on the other. Michigan State was on that dream side list. Had a call with Coach Hostler. He brought me out there to play at an ID camp, and then, kind of just got the ball rolling from there. Stayed there, have an amazing experience, like you said, 2-time Big Ten champion, undefeated both seasons. And then decided, for some reasons, playing time and wanting to be closer to home, went to Buffalo.
You don't really like warm weather, do you?
No, so that's the thing. Everyone
I don't
says-
like cold weather. Yeah.
Everyone always says, like, oh, are you? I'm like, I want to say yes, but all my choices have said otherwise.
And they kind of got worse.
Yeah. no, it
Hartford,
did.
somewhat okay. Michigan, then you go to Buffalo where
Yeah.
they get like 80 feet of snow
Yeah.
in a month.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was out of there before it got bad,
Right.
so can't complain.
That was kind of funny when you.
So, what do you feel sets Division I soccer apart from playing at other levels?
I think the time commitment. And it even like fluctuates throughout like Division I itself. So I was at a lower mid major, and then I was at Power 5, and then or Power 4, whatever.
Yeah,
it is
Power
now.
4 now.
And then a mid major. So just like time commitments itself, like I'll start with Michigan State. Right, our time block, our practice time was I think 3, but you're there for you're there for pre-practice, you're there for rehab, you're there for pre-practice talk. Then you got practice. It was no shorter than at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And then we have mandatory ice baths. And then we have a meeting. And then maybe we do meeting and dinner together, or maybe it's a meeting, then dinner, and then film. So now it's about 7 to 6 hours you're committed to. But then you're also expected to go home and watch film, right? It's not doing extra, right? That's what is required at that
Right.
level. So I think time commitment in itself, right? And then we look at Hartford or Buffalo, right? It wasn't, we're not there for 6 and 7 hours. Maybe it's an hour, and a half of practice, maximum. And then we have maybe film before, film after. So it's like 3 hours. So it definitely, I would say time commitment is the biggest difference.
And the facilities are definitely,
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah.
one. Michigan State, Buffalo definitely have different facilities and all
Yeah,
like that.
facility-wise, resources-wise, you see like Michigan State, great resources. We had the indoor bubble, but so did Buffalo. So it was like kind of similar, I would say. I
The
wouldn't say
the MAC conference does produce
well.
quite a
Yeah,
few
yeah,
good
yeah.
athletes.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of athletes that come out of that conference that are well known. A lot of NFL guys come
Yeah.
out of the MAC.
I remember, I think the biggest thing when you talk about like facilities and stuff, when I got to, I would say the biggest difference though was going from Hartford to Michigan State, right? That's not heard of at all.
Big transition.
So it was funny, like one practice, or the first practice I was at Michigan State, we like broke out after practice like for a water break. And all of a sudden, like people are coming up to me with water bottles. And I'm like, looking around, I'm like,
What are they doing?
I'm like, thank you. I can get it myself. And they're like, no. Like,
Yeah.
this is my job. And I'm like, okay. Like, I was used to, I would be the one carrying out the
Right.
jug on a little wagon, pumping the balls. And now it's like completely different. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, Rutgers, Michigan State,
Yeah, I was
Big
gonna
Ten.
say.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure I can imagine listening to Kelly speak. You're thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
Like you have all that stuff
My
too.
freshman year was COVID as well, so I getting tested every day
Yeah.
and wondering if we're gonna have practice that day or if we're gonna wrestle or not. So I could resonate with everything you were just talking about.
It was
from
the
that.
unknown that was the hardest
Yeah,
part.
Agreed. Yeah,
for a lot of
the
us.
unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For a lot of us.
COVID was hard.
So one of the things that a lot of people seem to gravitate to with our podcast is recruiting. And I know you kind of touched on that a little bit before. So I guess you can say you've been recruited a few times,
Yeah.
so to speak. But how can you touch on that a little bit? Like what was that process like for you coming out of high school and then, from that Hartford to Michigan State and then ultimately to Buffalo?
Yeah. To first say, I think recruiting when I first started versus now looks completely different, right?
And that's only been in the last 5 years?
Yeah. So I mean, now you see girls or even boys creating social media accounts for getting recruited. That was never a thing.
Right.
After ID camps, you see girls going up to our coaches and asking them for pictures to go post it to say
Right.
thank you. That was just never.
And I'm noticing
around.
that with a lot of softball players in high school right now. They're doing that.
So I think it's very common. And then in terms of, I think coaches being allowed to speak to you.
Right.
I think I forget when we were allowed to start talking to coaches, but I think it's definitely has changed since then. But for myself, right, I was a late commit. So I committed, I think, my senior or my summer of junior year of high school. So that was super late. I went up to an ID camp at Hartford, and lucky enough, afterwards, the coach called me into the office and just offered me there after the ID camp. So I was very fortunate for that. And then second time around, right, I think I was still young and naive. I also wasn't aware of who I really was as a player.
Right.
So did I ask all the right questions? Probably not, right? That second time around, I was more aware of who I was as a player. So that means, what role am I going to have on the field? What formation are we playing? Can I see myself? And I think I had to go through a learning experience to figure that out, to ask the right questions. But I think the biggest question that you should be asking is, what role do you see for me on or off the field?
Yeah, and just not jumping at the first offer.
No.
Because if there's one, there's probably more.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And I would say, go visit the schools, right? You'll know when you get that feeling, and it'll feel like home, and you'll be like, okay, this is it. But like you said, don't jump on the first one. There's plenty of others, and you also don't want to just don't settle, right? You know who you are as a player, you know who you want to be as a player, so just don't settle for the first.
So, not settling, but I do have to ask you this. Had Michigan State come calling when you were in high school, would you have jumped at that first offer?
Probably.
I love the honesty.
Yeah, I will be honest.
So having played at the high levels at a high level sport, do you feel that has impacted in your life?
Yeah. I think definitely invaluable lessons, and I just think, as an athlete competing at a high level, you kind of have a different perspective on things. When things do get hard, or you get up in the morning, you're like, oh, I don't feel like going to practice, right? It's not that you have to, you get to. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned, just privileges, being just, sorry, joking up. No,
it's fine.
Just in terms of just, being a student athlete at an institution like that, there's no better privilege than representing something bigger than yourself. So I think that is just.
And then balancing, school, practice, recovery. You want to talk a little bit about that as well?
I think routines, our brains are wired to pick up patterns and stuff. So once you start getting into a good routine, right, that trial and error though, especially as a freshman, there's so many unknowns. You're thrown kind of off the deep end and then just expected to figure that out. But at Power 4 schools, at, any school actually, resources, right? Your mandatory study hall hours for freshman year, it's that 8 hours. Don't go in there and do Netflix for 8 hours. You're there for a reason.
Yeah.
Do your homework so that you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And like I said before, trial and error. I'm a type A person, so I have 3 different apps for planning my day. It might all say the same thing, right? But I have to have it in 3 different places just to know, organization, time blocking, and then I think just habit or making like different homes for habits. So don't do your homework in bed. Like don't associate that kind of stress with somewhere that you want to rest.
Right.
And that's a big thing for me.
You touched on something too, and it's something that I've spoken to a lot of my athletes about through the years. I think it's very difficult for an athlete who plays a fall sport going into their freshman year of college.
Yeah.
Because
You
I
get hit
played
all at once.
I played baseball, so even though we had a fall season, it's not as crazy as you guys have to be there in some cases maybe in July.
Yeah.
And then you get thrust into moving in, new situation, maybe on your own for first time, and then you blink and it's the holidays.
Yeah.
Season's over, you're home, first semester's over, and you're like, what just
has
happened?
Yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it honestly, like that transition, especially if you're going away from school, right? It can be hard.
Right.
No doubt about that. But it's also easier to have people around you, right? Like you're thrown in, but you're thrown into the freshman dorms with everyone else who's just trying to survive the same. And I think like the freshman dorms is one of the best experiences, right? Because you're
Right.
all on the same wavelength. You're all going through the same stuff.
Right.
So it's like having those people around you that understand. And then also just leaning on your teammates.
Right.
Being able to look up to the upperclass and ask them questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's like my biggest thing. Whether it's, to your coach or to your teammates, you should be able to be comfortable enough to ask questions so that you feel confident going into it. Like I mentioned before, resources, right? You have your academic advisor who will make your schedule for you. So that's one less thing off your plate. And then tutors. They offer tutors as well. So if you're starting to struggle a little bit, right, you have that for yourself. So just using the resources that are available, and especially because it's free. You don't have
Right.
to pay for anything.
Yep.
So why not use it?
And I know you had that too.
Yeah, we got tutors, all that, the same resources, all Big Ten schools pretty much get all the same stuff. So
Right.
they're definitely very helpful, especially from academics. So being a D1 athlete comes with high expectations. How do you handle, the pressures going into a game or, going into a Big Ten game? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a mindset shift. So understanding that pressure is privilege. Like I mentioned before, it's a privilege to play for something bigger than yourself, and especially at like a Power 5 or Power 4 level. So just that mindset shift itself that, like I said before, like you don't have to be there, you get to be there. And that itself speaks volumes. So just understanding that like pressure isn't there because it's there because you're expected to be a certain way because you're capable of that, right? Your coach wouldn't ask for something from you if he didn't think you had it in you.
You touched on sleep. I think something that a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot that goes into, never mind Division I.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Division I is a full-time job.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think at any
Agreed.
level of college, the younger athletes, even the families, because it's new. They don't fully understand how much has to be put into physical fitness, sports performance, nutrition, sleep. So can you talk a little bit about like how you handled that and we're able to navigate through all of that?
Yeah. All of that, it is a lot. And I think now they're doing a better job at kind of encompassing that all
Right.
and understanding that like you need to, have those 8 to 10 hours of sleep to really recover. Like I said, I don't think you really realize that until after college. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it just goes over kids' heads, and
Agreed.
that's fair, right? That's fair. They're gonna realize that later down the road, and that's for them to figure out. Nutrition, right? That's one of the biggest things. Are you fueling yourself properly? Right? You're fueling for performance. So making sure that after practice, are you getting that protein in? Are you getting the carbs in? Right? For soccer, it's a high endurance sport, so we're making sure that we're getting protein and carbs, and it's a good amount of that. And then in turn, what else did you mention?
Well, sleep, sports performance training. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
you've come to my facility and trained. So
Quick self promo.
Oh, hey.
No, I was gonna say that's one thing I do wish I started earlier.
Right.
Plyometrics and just I feel like nowadays too I'm coaching these younger athletes and I just don't see them being as coordinated
Right.
as I feel like we used to be. When I was younger, we'd be playing outside all
Yes.
the time, and it's just not happening nowadays. Like I played multiple sports, and now now they're just figuring on one sport.
yeah, they're very specialized today.
Yeah.
in
So
what they're
it's
doing.
like, what's the biggest issue that I'm seeing right now with kids? It's just they're not as coordinated as they used to
Right.
be. So I think, like I said, I would have loved to know like plyometrics before. I'm one of those people. It's probably my upper body is a lot stronger than my lower body, so I overcompensate while running.
Right.
Probably if my teammates listen to this, they'll be laughing. We had actually one practice. This is a quick story. One practice where we just made fun of each other's running forms, and like I was a top contender. It was hilarious. But
We won't tell Mark that though.
no. Don't tell him. Well, that's what we were working on. So he'd probably whatever. But yeah, so like I said, like facilities like yours, I feel like are just starting to pop up more and more because you see that's the need now.
They're popping up, but actually we were talking about that in the lobby before, where I think too it's you got to be careful though, because it's a dime a dozen it seems, and I have certifications, not that they mean anything so to speak, but
they do.
But
credit yourself.
Anyone can go look on YouTube.
Yeah.
Put some stuff together and then claim that they're a speed and agility coach. And I'll never knock someone for wanting to help, but there's a lot more that goes into it. I mean, we've trained for 5 years together. And I've learned so much. Obviously, you've done training. You don't get to your level without doing some version of it. You've been around. I'm probably some good ones and some bad ones. And I just think that you really do have to do your homework. To make sure you just don't go somewhere just because.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, touching on that, like, I was going to completely shift the conversation, so you go first, actually.
I was going to say, no, it's for all sports, too. Like, soccer and wrestling are very different. We don't run at all unless it's a cut weight. But it's,
But I made you do a lot of running.
I did a lot of running. We did a lot of running, yes. But footwork takes it from, here to here when it comes to, sports as a whole, so.
I was going to touch on the physical fitness piece of it, right? I think one of my biggest tips of advice going into college is go and fit, right? That's, especially freshman year, there's a lot of uncontrollables and adversity that you're going to have to deal with, but physical fitness is your one controllable. Your fitness test is either the first or second day, and that's your first real impression on your coach. So if you come in fit, right, that already puts you kind of higher in the group. And that's for first impression could take you farther in the season.
Coming in prepared.
And physical fitness isn't, just going out and running 3 miles, right?
No.
If you go out and run 3 miles at an easy pace, that could even be considered like a recovery session, right? Are we mimicking the game? Especially in soccer, it's a stop and go game.
Correct.
So are we doing, interval runs? Are we doing tempos? Different physical fitness, and then are we throwing in like plyometrics, acceleration, deceleration, first step, like that? Those all things are important.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. So is there one person or one coach that has helped, a mentor for you to this point?
I don't want to say any names. I feel like I don't want to pick anyone out because I just feel like, obviously my parents, right? My mom and dad. My mom.
That's always a safe bet.
Yeah. No, my mom has been, in the game for so long. She offers better advice than my dad, who basically just after every game, tells me shoot harder. Sorry, Dad, but it's true. And then, my brother, who can offer probably the best advice out of those 3. But they've been my core. And that, system, having that belief system behind me has definitely propelled me through a lot of just adversity and obstacles coming through. And then lucky for me, or fortunate enough for me, I haven't really had a bad experience with a coach. I think I've had great experiences with all of them, and I know that's not for everyone. And I understand how hard it can be. So I'm fortunate for that, and so with that, I can't really pick anyone.
That's fair. That's
not
fair.
one person.
Hey, I would
say
my
them
mom and
all,
dad too,
if I can.
A season can be very long. Starts in August, ends in, you hope, late November, early December, I guess, if it works out that way. Losing streaks, personal slumps, ups and downs. How do you stay motivated and maintain a competitive drive during those times?
Yeah, I think, interesting enough, our coach would always ask one question when recruiting: do you hate to lose or do you love to win? And I would rather have someone on my team that hates to lose, right? Everyone loves to win. Everyone knows that, right? But if I have someone by my side that will do anything not to lose, right, I want them on my team.
Right.
And I think in all the environments I was in, it was like-minded people like that kind of brought the energy every day, right? At Buffalo this past season, our kind of motto was like relentlessly pursuing our best selves every day. So how do you win the day? So when it's not going your way, right, where can you find that little win for the day and kind of use that to fuel you through the session, right? If you're not having the best session, say coach says, hey, good pass, Kel, like that one compliment can take me through that whole session.
Right.
So it's just holding on to the little things and understanding that there is a bigger picture. At the beginning of the seasons, typically, I think I did this at all 3 schools. Like, we would have a sit-down session and kind of set our standards, set our goals. At Buffalo, we even, like, posted it on our wall. So it's a constant reminder for us that, it might not be going our way, but, like, right, are we going to let this story keep happening, or are we going to rewrite it?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So with what you know today, what might you tell your younger self, like the younger version of yourself? What's something you would say?
I think I have 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would tell myself that your purpose is going to be more impact rather than recognition, and to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think in terms of more of like soccer talking, to put myself more into pressured environments while training. I think I did a bunch of individual trainings, which is fine, right? Don't get me wrong. But once I got to, high level environments, it kind of came to a shock to me, like, hey, I've been training my technical, I've been training just by myself, and now I'm thrown in with a bunch of people. It's a game-like environment. The speed is way faster than what I've been playing at. So I think putting yourself in more pressured environments would definitely have helped me.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of touched on this. You've gotten into coaching. You're competing against me now. It seems like these days. That's fine. I always like
We
to
can collab.
We definitely can. We'll talk after this is over. But you kind of touched on it. What does soccer look like for you now? I mean, what does life look for you now that soccer's kind of over? The coaching part. And how would you like to be remembered in the game?
I'll touch on that second part first.
Sure.
I think remembered in the game for being a good teammate. Right now, looking back at it now, my lowest of lows, I was thinking that soccer was like the end all be all, and it's not. Listen, it's just a game. I mean,
right.
like even the biggest competitor, which I believe I am. Like you have to realize that looking back at it now, I'm not remembering how many goals I scored. I'm not remembering the passes. I'm not remembering the mistakes. Right, I'm remembering the people, the experience I have. All of that matters more. So I think. The impact that I want to have, like when people think back, they think about Kelly as who she was as a person rather than a player.
I said that to you a few times, that the thing that I missed the most, and granted, I'm a little bit older than both of you. It's been a long time since I've played competitively.
You're still young, Harry. Come on.
Thank you. But I miss the camaraderie. Yeah. I miss being in the locker room. I miss the bus. Well, maybe I don't miss the van and bus rides as much, but I miss being with the guys, wearing the same uniform, knowing that we're going out there with, a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to replicate that
anywhere.
In many other places. And it's one of the reasons why when the opportunity presented itself to me, I came into this business because it was probably going to be the closest I could get to repeating that.
Yeah.
Being around athletes and feeling that again, from a former athlete.
Yeah. That's where I feel like I'm chasing that feeling. And with coaching, it kind of satisfies it a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say 100%, but...
Well, and I got bored and decided to do a podcast with this guy.
Hey, we're having a great time.
We are having a great time. So we're taking it to a whole nother level.
Yep. So
maybe I'll have to get into podcasting.
Yeah. So lastly, what advice would you offer younger players today?
Comparison is a thief of joy. If you're constantly comparing yourself to other players, other teammates, other family members, other this, other that, like it's exhausting even saying that. It's exhausting to compare yourself, right? There's only going to be 11 girls, or in terms of soccer, right? There's only going to be 11 girls on the field at one time. If you're not that girl and you're constantly comparing yourself to her, right, that takes the joy, 1, out of your game, your process, your journey. 2, that takes the joy out of any team wins. Right? How are you going to celebrate a win when you're constantly just comparing and thinking about, what could have been, what I could have done, right? So just, stick to your track, stick to what you can do, what can you control, right? If you're not playing, what are you doing to try and get yourself back on the field, right? I always like to say when I wasn't finding the minutes I wanted to, I embraced my role, I didn't accept it.
Right.
So what am I doing if I'm not playing right? I'm going to get extra fitness. I'm going to watch film. I'm going to do this. I'm going to that, right? It's not what I have to do. It's not required, right? But it's what I want to do to get to where I want to be. So, right, it's not, I'm embracing my role. I'm being a good teammate, right? How's your body language on the bench? How are you cheering on your teammates? And then, I'm embracing that, but I'm not accepting it, right? Because I know that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get on the field.
I think that's very good advice. And I think there are, at times, legitimate reasons why an individual should leave a team.
Yeah.
I think there are legitimate reasons. But this is probably going to strike some controversy in this comment.
Harry
but
loves controversy.
Yeah, no, it's good clicks.
Views.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, we see a lot of, if I'm not playing, then I don't want to, like you just said,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to do the extra work
Yeah.
to get on the field. So let me go find another team where I can go play.
So I think for myself, I'm very intrinsically motivated, which, I think that's a dime a dozen sometimes. But, like you said, there's a lid for every pot. Maybe
Right.
that coach doesn't work for you, right? But you also have to do some self-reflection.
Right.
Looking back to the times when I wasn't playing, it's hard to admit, but I didn't deserve to be on that field, right? I was a liability because all I thought about when stepping onto that field was don't make a mistake.
Right.
Right? And that shouldn't be how you feel when playing a soccer game, right? You should be in that flow state, which that's the feeling that I love. That's the feeling that I chase for. And I just wasn't getting to that point. So you're right. Like, I should be on the bench. I should be supporting the girls that are on the field, doing something that I wish I could be right now.
Right.
But if that's not my role right now, it's okay. And like I said, not embracing it, accepting that I'm going to be where I am right now. I can be on the field at one point, right? But just understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a valuable lesson, and I think that's great advice that more people should listen to.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
Self-reflection.
I think it would go a long way.
Understanding that sometimes, coaches' decisions are out of your control, but
Right.
sometimes
But how you act is not.
yeah, right? How are you acting on the sidelines? What's your body language look like? Right? Coaches pick up everything, even if you don't think right. Sometimes I would go into the office and they would say something, and I'm like, oh, you were paying attention to that? Seriously? But no, you're right. And how are you acting on the sidelines? How are you acting in practice?
Right.
What are you willing to do?
Well, Kelly, a lot of great advice and some wonderful answers today
Thank you.
from you.
Thank you.
I think I learned a lot. I think our listeners and viewers will have learned a lot. We want to thank you again for coming in
Yes, thank
and
you for
being a
having
part
me.
of this. And that is a wrap on episode 11 of Destination Talk with Paz and Harry, and we'll see you again soon.